The broadest sense. All those qualities that underline the difference between myself and a member of the opposite sex improve my chances of becoming his sex partner, assuming that we understand each other, i.e., we resemble each other in all respects other than the specifically sexual. Our sexual differences can be more or less general, or more or less individually. They may be typical for the whole sex or for only an individual member of that sex. Men with a vigorous growth of beard, hairy chests, broad shoulders, narrow hips, big penises, for example, are generally more in demand, as are, conversely, women with delicate skin, big breasts, wide hips. The more individual polarity exists in any given case, the more ideal the sexual relationship is likely to become. We all do what we can to emphasize our sexual differentiation from the opposite sex, or with respect to a specific member of the opposite sex, as skillfully as possible. Whoever is not strikingly male or female will do everything possible to seem so by, for example, developing his biceps through gymnastics, pad her bra, style the hairdo, etc. The same motivation also underlies the so-called typically masculine and typically feminine kinds of behavior. It is always a conscious or unconscious parading of SCX-specific characteristics. To smile rarely or often, talk much or little, swing the hips or not in walking, makes people more manly or more unmanly. This kind of behavior is simulated, as shown by the fact that it is subject to fashion and can be dropped at will. The womanly mannerisms of the stars in the old movies are markedly different from those we see in films by Truffaut or Godard. To behave like a movie vamp of the 20s today is to appear not womanly but ridiculous. Biological law decrees a mixture of opposite hereditary factors in each offspring. To ignore or evade this decree, to lack expressly female or male sex characteristics and refuse to simulate them, is to forego one's chances of attracting the opposite sex and thereby one's chances of propagating one's kind. Polar opposition in the sex-specific areas, then, is combined with resemblance in all other respects. The man will usually be physically stronger than the woman, a sex-specific difference that makes them attractive to one another. But as soon as this difference becomes too great, as soon as the woman is so weak, or pretends to be so weak, that the physical difference can no longer be regarded as sex-specific, the stronger partner's protective instinct may seriously interfere with his sex instinct. He may refrain from sex in order not to hurt his partner. If, in addition to being physically inferior, she is also mentally inferior, the weaker partner tends to become increasingly the object of his protection. The sex act, normally a kind of combat at close quarters, under such conditions involves considerable self-restraint, and loses something essential in the process. Equality on the intellectual level, combined with polarity on the physical, is therefore a condition sine qua non of full-scale love between a man and a woman. A good guarantee for the necessary resemblance of the partners in the non-sexual realm is their belonging to the same generation. By a generation we mean the time span between the birth of an individual and the birth of its first offspring, about 20 to 25 years. Sexuality is in any case for adults, but if one partner is more than 25 years older than the other, and thereby belongs to the generation of the other's grandparents, the chances for a mutually satisfactory sexual relationship are relatively poor. There are of course cases in which a particular person's special dynamism can bridge this biological gap for a time, but such exceptions only confirm the rule. The frequent alliances between young women and men who are their seniors by more than a generation are no proof to the contrary. They always depend on the same factor, the wealth or social status of the much older man. If it were a biological mechanism that drove attractive young females into the arms of old men, a poor old pensioner might occasionally have a chance of marrying a rich young girl. Rational love. Just as a man can rationalize his protective instinct and make it function as altruistic love, he can also rationalize his sex instinct. Unlike an animal, a man can decide to give up sex for a time, or even permanently, for cultural or religious reasons, for fear of consequences, or for the sake of advantage, a socially advantageous marriage, for example. Instead of repressing his sex drive altogether, he can modify it, resorting to substitution or transposition. He may, for example, desire X, who has certain specific attractions for him, but if he cannot get X he can make do with Y, whom he finds less attractive, but better than no satisfaction at all. This kind of adjustment we call rational love, love based on reasoning rather than primary instinct, or as some might say, based on higher insight. Like the object of altruistic love, which can never be other than an inadequate child substitute, the object of rational love can never be more than an inadequate sex partner. The person involved is either insufficiently differentiated, physically too unmasculine, or feminine, not attractive enough, or too unlike the lover mentally, too stupid or too intelligent. Such an inadequate sex partner is usually in the running only until a more attractive partner turns up, or as long as there is some extraneous reward involved, of whichever kind: money, companionship, prestige, the wish for offspring, etc. Extreme forms of such rational or rationalized love are, for example, visits to a prostitute, masturbation, pornography, voyeurism. Actual love here becomes abstracted to the extent of being totally replaced by symbolic actions.